So, what is your name?
My name is Wilia Bell Lee.
Okay.
Lee is my last name.
What brought you over here to the march?
I was in the initial first march at 11 years old. I was sent from Clarksville, Mississippi as a part of the Youth Council of the NAACP. They paid for us to go. We went to McIntosh, Georgia, and we received training under Dr. Martin Luther King. Jesse Jackson and Jim Bellows were two of my chaperones. So as a result of going through that 2 weeks in McIntosh, Georgia, of the nonviolent reaction, we were then qualified to go to the march. We went to the march. We came here to Montgomery. It was caravan to Selma. We marched across that bridge, and the hostility from the eyes of the people, even though they had included, since the Bloody Sunday, they had included the deputizing of the National Guard, who were there to protect us, so we were not beat down like the first group, fortunately, but we were very, very aware, and we were fearful of the fact that it might happen. And of course, we were going with a willingness to, with an expectation that it would happen. The adults were basically our chaperones. It was mostly children from the Youth Council from all over the United States that were part of that march. The adults acted like chaperones. They acted as our, well, you call them now. You call them now, I guess you would call them counselors or whatever you all call them now. But we called them chaperones at that time. They were the ones that manned the highways because it was only a 2-lane highway. It was not a 4-lane. And we were to walk on one side and often on the shoulders of that roadway. As we marched, they secured for us food and places to, to comfort ourselves and to kind of refresh ourselves, as much as we could. When we got to Montgomery, when we got here, this was the place where we tried to approach the steps of the Capitol, but we were denied that. Now, the celebrities or the icons were able to go up, but not the children who had actually marched. This time for me, it was wonderful by comparison, because I wasn't gripped with fear. I had an opportunity to see persons of my ethnicity as deputy sheriffs and as highway patrolmen here. That was just absolutely so rewarding. To know that we had made an impact on the system that did not want us to be a part of this democratic system at all. In addition to that, I believe that this time we will make an impact on your generation, my grandsons, my children's generation, who will never again give up the ballot. They will never again give up the power of the ballot. And they will hopefully recognize even more so the importance of putting persons into elected offices that will make our causes be first and paramount. Now, I believe with all that's within me, that's the reason why I came. And I believe from the responses that we have already made that impact. And I am certainly sure that in the various primaries that they will be having throughout this country, some of those persons will be so inclined to bring forth leadership that will replace our leadership, with passion that will replace our passion, and with determination to go forward and to not give up The only thing that we, especially as Afro-American and brown people, the only thing that we have that is free to us, that has the power of a voice. Because when I registered to vote, I had to be 21 in order to register. The children are only 18. And we had to pay a poll tax when I was in Mississippi, when we were in, those persons who were in Mississippi, because at the time I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania when I registered to vote, but had made the impact by being a part of the citizenship training that NACP gave us stipends for. And it was just such a nostalgic journey to see so many persons that I had seen before and had crossed my path. Dick Gregory for one, and some of the mothers, and to see some of the landmarks along the way was just most incredible. It really, I can't describe for you the feelings that I had, but I was joyful and sorry at the same time. Sorry that we had to come and show America that the ballot is important to us, and very happy that we could without intimidation.
Definitely. And so, as you were saying that you were from Mississippi, how was it like growing up in Mississippi, and what did you do when you came back from that first march?
Well, when I was born in a parsonage and raised, I was born in Louisiana and raised in Louisiana and Mississippi because my father was a minister pastor. One of the things that I must say that as a child, I was as tall as I am now at 11. And so I was never really treated like a real child that I was. I was treated more, I was given more responsibility. Let me just say that. I was given more responsibility. And so I basically acted more and was around more persons who were more responsible than I should have been, but I was associated and affiliated with them. Then having had the citizenship training for nonviolent reactions, and having met most of the icons of the African-American persons at that time, having met A. Philip Randolph, having had the privilege of actually being touched by E.W.B. Du Bois, Harry Belafonte, Joan Baez, Eartha Kitt, I'm trying to think of the entertainers that were there, that came by, all of us youth council, because we were up front at the mass meetings. We were up front, when we began the march. But they would come by and they would touch us on our heads or shake our hands. Rather than Martin Luther King were there when we were being trained. Mrs. Coretta King, Dorothy Parker, Jim Bevel's, Jesse Jackson, Andrew Young, who was one of the higher echelon persons that in the organization, stuck with our man. James Foreman. I can't call all of the names, but all of the icons that were there at that time, they came by and greeted us individually, and during the 2 weeks of training, that is. And when we got to the crest of Pettus Bridge, we were willing and ready and expecting to give our lives for that cause, because we did not want to live as we had been living. By the same much, we were spared. Many of us were spared the harsh abuse and the beatings that some did take, but we experienced it. We experienced it vicariously, and the pain that it brought. Seeing it, expecting it, and anticipating action was something that was very, very difficult for me as a child. To have had that experience, or to have had that feeling, that depth of feeling. But yet, there was hope, there was faith that this would pass, and that we would not have to live like that always, or be subject to it. And surely it did happen. And I never dreamed that the power of the ballot would be so minimized among my children, among my grandchildren, and great-grands, as they will come along, that people do not value it and don't see the power of it. And I never dreamed that we would have to come back to make that impression all over again upon the voters to become first-class citizens by casting the vote. I never thought that we would come to the point where those who are supposed to represent us would work against us. So for today, the only point of concern that still hurts is that persons who have come through the slaughter of our own people have not given back. They have not told the story. And so therefore many of you don't know the story. And it has never been lived out as Dr. King intended it to be lived out. And seeing his son today, and hearing him speak was good, but it wasn't as good as when his father led us to a victory. We were just so happy to have been able to come into places and to sit in seats that we'd never sat in. Had never been allowed to use bathrooms before. In public places. Had lived through seeing the signs come down, colors only, and white women and white men had their own individual refreshment stations, and we had to have just one that was used by both women and men. And yet we had to pay the same cost that they had to pay. So today, even though it appears to be more equalized, we still have a long way to go. A long way to go. There is still a great need for you all to carry the torch. And there's a great need for us to tell our story so that you will know those who have lived through it, who have tried to assimilate the way that America say we should be, opposed to telling our story of how it is. Thank you. And I pray that you will just carry the torch, and that persons of your age group will know that today the only free thing that we have that has power is the ballot. That's the only free thing we have in America that has power. And if we neglect to emphasize the power of the ballot, it will be even worse for you, because at least we have the plantations, the cotton fields, the corn fields, the cane fields, the tobacco farms, that we could go and make a little bit of money. But they're all turned into condominiums. They're all turned into golf courses, and you name it. There's no place to return. So we can't go back.